26 movies, 6 tears. From a film so nasty theaters handed out barf bags, to another so convincing the police showed up just to make sure nobody actually died. These are the most disturbing movies in history. Let's start at the tip of the iceberg. Tier 1. Horror fan. The Exorcist, 1973. Imagine waking up to a punch in the face from a priest. Then that priest turns out to be possessed and throws himself out a second-story window. That's The Exorcist. People call it the scariest movie ever made. And not because of jump scares or flashy effects. It's scary because it feels real. Uncomfortably, disturbingly real. The movie starts quietly. There's this single mom/famous actress named Chris McNeil. She moved into a new house with her young daughter, Reagan. Their life looks picture perfect. Big house, loving mother and daughter, busy movie set. But all that normalcy gets shattered the day Chris stumbles on a Ouija board in the basement. Not knowing its nature, Reagan, who's been lonely, used it to talk to a mysterious Captain Howdy. Chris laughs it off at first, not realizing she's basically invited a demon into their home. The thing is, Reagan is just a kid, so she doesn't know any better. And the demon, well, it knows exactly what it's doing. The weird stuff starts small. Reagan says her bed shakes at night. There are odd noises, whispers, things going missing. Chris just thinks her daughter is bored or acting out. But things get stranger and scarier. Reagan's personality changes. She becomes angry, then aggressive, shouting profanities and singing in creepy voices. Even during a dinner party, she suddenly wets herself on the carpet in front of all the guests. Chris is shocked, but it only gets worse. Worried, Chris takes Reagan to the hospital for every test you can imagine. Brain scans, neurology exams, endless doctor's visits. But nothing shows up. The doctors are baffled and finally suggest maybe Reagan's just lonely. Or maybe it's stress from the move and her parents' separation. Chris wants to believe them, but deep down, she knows something's wrong. Meanwhile, things in the house get out of control. Reagan's voice changes. Objects start flying through the air. She has sudden, violent fits, even injuring herself. But soon, weird things start happening around her house. Strange noises at night, furniture moving by itself, and Reagan starts acting different. After seeing over 80 doctors with no answers, one finally drops the word exorcism. It sounds crazy, but at this point, it's the only thing left. Chris called 2 priests. She thinks maybe Reagan isn't sick at all. Maybe something evil has taken over her daughter. The priests decide Reagan needs an exorcism, which is a special ritual to remove evil spirits. The exorcism is brutal, full of taunts and terror. The demon twists Reagan's body, throws furniture, spits bile, and torments the priests with their own regrets. These scenes make you believe this could actually happen, and that scares people more than ghosts or zombies ever could. People in 1973 were so shocked watching The Exorcist that many fainted in theaters. Some even threw up right in the aisles. Movie theaters actually handed out special barf bags to audiences just in case. In the UK, local officials banned the film from showing in some places. They said it was dangerous and could harm people. It even got banned from home video in Britain for over 10 years. During that time, The Exorcist became a sort of forbidden legend. Everyone knew about it, but many couldn't actually watch it. Even now, some people think the movie is cursed. They talk about accidents on set, actors getting hurt, and weird things happening during filming. Some of it is probably just urban legend or maybe clever marketing, but the movie still feels dark, even though it's just a made-up story. Critics were mixed at first. Some said it was brilliant and important, while others thought it was disgusting and too scary for anyone to watch. Still, The Exorcist got nominated for 10 Academy Awards, which rarely happens for horror movies. It even won 2 awards, one for screenplay and one for sound. As a result, horror movies started being taken seriously. But here's the most interesting part. The Exorcist changed movies forever. Before it, horror movies weren't respected. After it, people saw horror could be important, scary, and meaningful all at once. Today, almost every scary movie with demons or possessions owes something to The Exorcist. Hereditary, 2018. People say family sticks together, but in Hereditary, the real danger isn't ghosts. It's what families hide from each other. That's exactly what happens in Hereditary. The story is about the Graham family. There's the mom, Annie, her emotionally distant husband, Steve, their teenage son, Peter, and Charlie, their young daughter, who acts a bit strange and likes to be by herself. The movie starts when Annie's mom, Ellen, passes away. At her funeral, you can feel that Annie and Ellen didn't have a good relationship. There are also some people at the funeral that the family doesn't know, but they seem very interested in Ellen. This is the first clue that something odd is going on. After Ellen dies, the family starts to have more problems. Everyone feels lonely and sad, even when they're together in the same room. It feels like nobody wants to talk or comfort each other. Then something terrible happens again. Annie makes Peter take Charlie to a party. At a party, Charlie eats some cake that has nuts in it, but she's allergic, so she starts to have trouble breathing. Peter quickly puts her in the car and drives to the hospital. But on the way, Charlie sticks her head out the window for air, and Peter accidentally drives past a telephone pole. Charlie is killed. It's a shocking moment, and it changes the family forever. After Charlie dies, Annie falls into deep grief. She goes to a support group for people who have lost loved ones and meets a woman named Joan. Joan says that she can talk to the dead and teaches Annie how to do the ritual. Annie tries the seance at home and thinks she makes contact with Charlie's spirit, but it soon becomes clear that something very wrong is happening in the house. Like, suddenly doors slam, objects move by themselves, and Peter feels like he's being haunted. Annie discovers that her mother was actually the leader of a secret cult that worships a demon called Payman. The cult's goal is to have Payman possess a male host so they can get riches and power. Annie finds out that her mother first tried to use Annie's brother, but he died. So the cult used Charlie as Payman's host, but after Charlie died, they started working to put Payman into Peter. The movie's ending is disturbing and confusing. In short, Annie finds her mother's headless body in the attic. Her husband Steve burned by a curse. Annie becomes possessed and chases Peter, finally cutting off her own head in front of a group of cultists. Peter's possessed by Payman, and then he goes to the treehouse, where he finds cult members waiting for him. They place a crown on his head and celebrate. They have finally given their king a new body. So what does it all mean? Hereditary is about a family who never had a chance. Their lives were controlled by a secret group from the start, and nothing they did could change their fate. Some of the visuals are genuinely terrifying, including one infamous scene where Annie crawls across the ceiling, spider-like and silent. Critics loved Hereditary, saying it was one of the scariest movies in years. Audiences had mixed feelings though. Some people thought it was too intense and couldn't even finish watching it. Others believed it was brilliant and important. Interestingly, a movie theater in Australia accidentally showed the scary trailer right before a kids' movie, causing parents to panic and leave the theater. That only made people more curious about how scary this film really was. Today, Hereditary is considered one of the most disturbing films ever. Scenes from the movie turned into memes online, especially Annie screaming at the dinner table, because it felt real and raw. Even though it's terrifying, the movie also explores real-life topics like grief, trauma, and how secrets can tear families apart. And believe it or not, there's a film deeper down where the family problems make this look pretty normal. But for now, if you think that was messed up, wait until we get to the next one. Same director, even brighter lighting, but somehow way darker. Midsommar, 2019. Imagine getting invited to a sunny summer festival in Sweden, thinking you'll find peace and maybe heal a little. But instead, you find something much darker. That's Midsommar. This movie is directed by Ari Aster, the same person behind Hereditary. So you know how disturbing it would be. At the start, it feels more like a winter horror. The main character, Dani, is already at her lowest. She learns her sister has not only taken her own life, but also their parents. This makes Dani feeling empty and lost, and the movie lets you feel every ounce of her pain. After this tragedy, Dani's boyfriend, Christian, invites her to travel with him and his friends to Sweden. Christian isn't really a great boyfriend. He barely talks to Dani and seems like he wants to break up. Still, Dani decides to go. She's hoping this trip might help her feel better. Once they arrive, everything looks perfect. The village is bright, the grass is green, and the people are always smiling. But as soon as Dani drinks the mushroom tea, things start to feel strange. She sees things that aren't there and feels even more alone. It's like the village is playing tricks on her mind. Then something shocking happens. During a village ceremony, 2 senior members of the community climb to the top of a cliff and jump off in front of everyone. It's a tradition for the village, but for Dani and her friends, it's pure horror. One of them survives the fall. The villagers walk up with a mallet and make sure it's finished. The outsiders want to leave, but the villagers convince them to stay, which is a big mistake. As the festival goes on, Dani's friends start to disappear. Nobody tells the truth about where they went. Dani is left feeling confused and scared, but she's also pulled into the village's games and dances. The villagers treat her like a queen. For the first time, Dani feels loved and important. However, it's all part of the cult's plan to control her. In the end, things get even worse. Christian, her boyfriend, is chosen to be the final sacrifice. The villagers put him in a bear suit and burn him alive with the others they have killed. The people scream and cry together, making the whole thing even scarier. Finally, Dani smiles. a strange, empty smile that means she's become part of the cult. So, Midsommar is a movie that tricks you. It looks safe and sunny, but it's full of sadness and horror. It gets a huge score on the disturbance meter, and for good reason. Family secrets and cult rituals seem bad now, but there's a movie much deeper down where groupthink, cruelty, and power create a nightmare with no escape. If you're curious, remember the name Salò. We'll get there soon enough. Tusk, 2014. Have you ever had an idea that seemed hilarious at first, but turned terrifyingly wrong the longer you thought about it? That's exactly how we ended up with a movie like Tusk. Seriously, someone actually thought this was a good idea, and they actually made it into a movie. Tusk begins with Wallace, an annoying podcaster who travels around making fun of people on his show. He's the kind of guy who thinks he's hilarious, but actually everyone just puts up with it because he's loud and confident. You probably know someone like that. Unfortunately. One day, Wallace finds a strange online ad promising incredible stories, so he travels to rural Canada to check it out. What could possibly go wrong, right? Well, basically everything. Wallace meets an elderly man named Howard, who seems harmless at first. They chat about life, sea adventures, and Howard's unusual love for a certain walrus he once knew. Now, here's the interesting part. Howard doesn't just miss the walrus. He wants Wallace to become a walrus. Howard captures Wallace and performs horrible surgeries on him, slowly turning him into a human-walrus hybrid. Imagine waking up from surgery and realizing you're suddenly part sea creature. That's pretty much Wallace's new reality. Howard gives Wallace tusks made from his own leg bones, sews his arms together, and makes him wear a patchwork walrus suit made from human skin. And it's even worse than it sounds. Meanwhile, Wallace's friends notice he's missing, because even annoying friends have people who care about them. They hire a detective who might actually be worse at his job than Wallace is at podcasting. He's quirky, strange, and not exactly helpful. It's almost like he's never actually found anyone before. And he probably hasn't. But here's the truly wild part about Tusk. It's based on a real conversation from Kevin Smith's podcast. He joked about turning someone into a walrus, and then his audience dared him to actually make the movie. So he did. And now, the rest of us have to live knowing this movie exists. Thanks a lot, Internet. Critics didn't know what to do with Tusk. Some called it genius, others called it insane, and many wondered if Kevin Smith just lost a bet. The movie didn't exactly win awards, unless you count being listed in countless weirdest movies ever videos as an achievement. But surprisingly, it gained a cult following, because apparently watching a guy turn into a walrus is exactly what some people consider good entertainment. Now, you might be thinking the next film is going to feature an even scarier creature, but sometimes the most terrifying thing in your life doesn't need a monster at all. Requiem for a Dream, 2000. Now, this isn't your average scary movie, but it might be the saddest one you'll ever see. Requiem for a Dream is a movie you feel in your gut, even after the screen goes black. So here's how it all starts. There's Sarah Goldfarb. She keeps arguing with her son, Harry, because he keeps taking her TV to pawn for drug money. Harry and his friend, Tyrone, both use heroin, and they keep telling themselves that one day they'll be rich and everything will get better. But as you'll see, it never does. Sarah tries to hold on to the little joys she has. Her favorite thing is watching a game show on TV. One day, she gets a letter inviting her to be on the show, and for her, it's a chance to feel special again. She wants to fit into her favorite red dress, but it's so small now. Because of that, she decides to go on a strict diet. Her world suddenly becomes all about losing weight so she can look good on TV. Meanwhile, Harry wants to get his life together too. He dreams of having money, making his mom proud, and living happily with his girlfriend, Marion. Marion, on the other hand, feels empty and just wants to create something beautiful. And Tyrone only wishes he could escape street life for good. But instead of getting better, things get worse. Harry, Marion, and Tyrone keep chasing the next high, always promising themselves that the next time will be different. It never is. At the same time, Sarah's crash diet turns into a nightmare. She starts taking amphetamine pills from a doctor who hardly listens to her. The pills kill her appetite, but they also make her paranoid and unstable. You see, all four of them are just trying to fill a hole in their lives, but each step they take drags them deeper. Harry tries to help his mother, warning her about the pills, but he can't even see how addicted he is himself. Tyrone keeps getting into trouble, and Marion starts to lose hope. Sarah's world turns darker every day. She takes more and more pills, hoping to be ready for her big TV moment, but instead she slips into a kind of madness. She starts hallucinating, imagining her fridge is alive and attacking her, and seeing herself on TV surrounded by people who laugh at her. The more lost she becomes, the more invisible she is to everyone around her. Now, let's take a look at Harry, Marion, and Tyrone. Their situation gets desperate. They try to go to Florida, hoping to score more drugs, but nothing goes right. Harry's arm is infected from the use, and Marion has to do things she never thought she would just to survive. Tyrone gets arrested. In prison, he goes through withdrawal with no help, no dignity, just pain. The movie ends with a quick look at what everyone wishes for. Harry dreams about being with Marion. Marion clings to hope. Tyrone remembers his mother's love. And Sarah imagines her son visiting her on TV. But none of those dreams will ever come true. In short, their lives are shattered, and there's no way back. The style of Requiem for a Dream makes everything feel even more intense. Fast edits, strange music, and washed-out colors show how the characters' worlds are falling apart. As a result, the film is less like a story and more like a funeral for hope itself. So what's the lesson here? This isn't just a movie about drugs. It's a story about how easy it is to lose everything when you're desperate, and how sometimes the world doesn't help you. It just pushes you further down. Even doctors and friends can fail you, and dreams can turn into nightmares before you know it. Honestly, the most disturbing moment might be Sarah's visit to the casting agency. She's confused and lost, and nobody really helps her. It makes you wonder what you'd do if someone you loved ended up like that. Would you notice before it was too late? There are a few moments of warmth, like Tyrone's memory of his mom telling him to always love. But those moments are crushed by the weight of addiction and pain. Tier 2. Horror Expert. Threads, 1984. Sometimes horror movies haunt you because of what might happen. Threads haunts you because of what absolutely could. Unlike most apocalyptic films, Threads doesn't lean on aliens, zombies, or stylish heroes. Instead, it asks the most terrifying question of all. What if nuclear war actually happened? And we watched it unfold through the eyes of ordinary people living their ordinary lives. The film is set in Sheffield, England, during the 1980s. The film is built on a foundation of chilling realism. Young lovers Ruth and Jimmy move in together, excited, hopeful, and expecting a child. Their lives are full of little routines, family dinners, and jokes, like a normal, happy family. And that's the point. The film spends just enough time showing you what's at stake. You see the life that's about to be ripped away. It goes downhill while most of Sheffield goes about their day. The background noise gets darker. News bulletins talk about tension. Some people panic. Most just keep going, assuming nothing will happen, until it does. But then things change very quickly. Suddenly, news reports get worse. The radio says the world is on the final arc. In one scene, people in a bar are having fun, but then a serious report comes on the TV. Everyone stops to listen. The bartender tries to change the channel, but now everyone is scared. You can feel the panic start. When the sirens finally go off, there's almost no time to hide. People run. Some just freeze. And then, boom, the bomb drops. The lights go out. The city is destroyed in seconds. And that's just the beginning. The rest of the movie isn't about the bomb. It's about what happens after. There's no more food or clean water. The sky is full of smoke and poison. Buildings are gone. Most people are dead or dying. Those who survive are lost, hungry, and sick. The government tries to help, but they're hiding underground, away from the real danger. There aren't enough supplies. No one can talk to each other. People fight for food. It's every person for themselves. Ruth survives the bomb, but her life is ruined. She has to give birth alone in a cold, broken building. The movie shows her daughter, Jane, growing up in this new, sad world. There's no school, no games, no hope. People just do whatever they can to stay alive. The saddest part? The characters you care about just disappear. Jimmy is there, and then he's gone. No goodbye, no story. Just missing forever. Threads is scary. Not because of monsters or aliens, but because it's real. It shows how quickly life can fall apart if there's nuclear war. Everything you know and love can be taken away by decisions made far away, by people you will never meet. The film doesn't give you hope. It's a warning. Nuclear war is possible, and if it happens, life as we know it will end. There's nothing exciting about it, just loss and silence. So if you think movies about zombies are scary, remember, the real world has bigger dangers. And if the threads holding our world together break, it all falls apart. And in the next film, the world doesn't even need to end to show you how terrifying people can become, so long as they believe they have a reason. Martyrs, 2008. Martyrs begins with a young girl named Lucy. She escapes from an abandoned building where she's been held captive and terribly abused. The police rescue her, but Lucy never really recovers. She's haunted by memories and visions of the torture she endured. Pretty understandable. Years later, Lucy tracks down the people she believes are responsible for her pain. Alongside her best friend, Anna, Lucy decides to confront them. Except, confront here means burst into their home with a shotgun, which honestly feels like a pretty strong start to the day. Here's where the film takes a shocking turn. Anna realizes something even worse happening. The couple Lucy killed was part of a secret group obsessed with finding out what happens after death, but their method isn't exactly scientific. Basically, they torture innocent people until they're near death, hoping they'll glimpse the afterlife and tell them what they see. Seriously, that's their entire plan. Unfortunately for Anna, she's captured by this group and becomes their newest test subject. The next part of the film is hard to watch. Anna endures pain beyond imagination. It's not quick, flashy horror. Instead, it's slow and quiet, which makes it even harder to stomach. There are no jump scares here, just constant dread. Critics and audiences alike were sharply divided on Martyrs. Some people called it brilliant and powerful. Others called it sick and pointless. But here's the deal. Even people who admire the film don't exactly recommend it to friends. Unless, of course, you secretly dislike your friends. One famous story from the film's premiere involves viewers fainting, leaving the theater, and even crying. Seriously, the film was so controversial that several countries banned it. Even hardcore horror fans, who usually brag about how tough they are, admit this one got under their skin. Strangely, some critics say Martyrs is philosophical. It asks questions about death, suffering, and belief. But good luck thinking clearly while watching someone get skinned alive. Speaking of philosophical, the next film was supposed to be meaningful, but most people ended up throwing up and walking out long before they found any meaning at all. Antichrist, 2009. Antichrist is what happens when art house cinema gets locked in a room with grief, guilt, and a whole lot of body horror. The movie opens with a beautifully shot black and white slow motion scene. A couple is making love while their toddler silently climbs out of a window and falls to his death. Yeah, that's the first 5 minutes. There's no plot armor in this Iceberg. The parents are destroyed by this loss, especially the mother. At the funeral, she's so broken she can barely stand. Even after a month, she can't get out of bed. The husband is a therapist, but instead of letting another doctor help his wife, he decides to treat her himself. There's a reason therapists aren't supposed to treat people they know, and this is it. Their conversations are tense, awkward, and clearly not helping. She thinks he doesn't care. At the same time, the wife had an ongoing thesis, a research project about witchcraft in a place called Eden Woods. But now, even hearing the name of that forest fills her with fear. Trying to help, the husband says they should go to Eden Woods to face her fear together. So they go, deep into the wild, away from everyone. The forest looks beautiful, but nothing feels safe. The husband sees strange things, like a deer with a dead baby, a bird eaten alive by ants, a fox that seems to speak, saying chaos reigns. Nature feels dangerous, like it's watching them. As time went on, the wife got worse. She hears her son crying even when he isn't there. She starts saying that women are naturally bad, that nature itself is cruel, that maybe she's evil too. Her husband keeps telling her it's all in her head, but he's starting to lose it too. Their relationship is a mess. Sometimes they hurt each other on purpose, then try to make up with a bedroom activity, which is violent and desperate. There's one scene so graphic that it got cut from a lot of versions. A moment where she hurts him in a way that's almost impossible to watch. Then she drills a hole through his leg, puts a heavy grindstone through it, and throws away the wrench so he can't escape. So he drags himself across the ground, collapses in a foxhole, and is nearly buried alive. His wife finds him but doesn't help, at least not right away. She believes someone has to die to satisfy the three beggars, a deer, a fox, and a crow. By now, it starts to feel like the forest itself is alive. The animals keep showing up, watching, almost waiting, like the nightmare won't end until a sacrifice is made. And then, in the end, a flashback reveals something even more chilling. At the moment their son fell, the wife saw him at the window, but didn't move to stop him. This guilt, whether she was frozen in shock or something darker, adds another layer to her suffering. Overwhelmed with this guilt, she cuts off her vital part, punishing herself in the most extreme way. Now, in a rush of chaos, the husband finds the wrench, frees himself, and in terror and anger, strangles his wife. Then he burns her body on a pyre outside the cabin. As dawn comes, the husband sees a haunting vision. Dozens of women in old-fashioned clothes, their faces blurred, walking out of the woods and up a hill. Are these the ghosts of women who suffered in witch trials? Are they freed by the wife's death? Or is it just another vision born from trauma and guilt? The film doesn't give clear answers. So, did you get it? Or are you confused like the rest of us? You're probably wondering why this movie is called Antichrist. Antichrist because it shows a world where everything is upside down. Nature feels evil instead of healing, and grief brings chaos instead of comfort. The forest isn't a place of peace, but of darkness and fear. In the film, love turns into pain, and faith is replaced by despair. By the end, it's clear that Antichrist is about what happens when suffering and guilt become so powerful that they destroy hope and goodness. The title reminds us that sometimes the real darkness comes from inside us, not from outside. But at least this movie has some meaning in it. I don't even know why someone would even want to create the next one. The Human Centipede, 2009. Most scary movies have monsters, ghosts, or maybe a creepy guy in a mask chasing teenagers through the woods. But honestly, none of those things seem nearly as scary once you've heard about the Human Centipede. Seriously, someone actually thought this was a good idea. And not only did they think it, they made 3 movies about it. That's right, 3. The first movie starts off pretty normal. 2 American tourists named Lindsay and Jenny are traveling in Germany. They're young, they're excited, and they're completely terrible at directions. After getting lost on a dark, rainy road, their car breaks down. Obviously, their phones have no signal, because phones never work when you actually need them. The girls wander through the woods until they find a big fancy house. They knock on the door, and a creepy-looking guy answers. Now, most people would probably turn around and run, but Lindsay and Jenny go inside anyway. The creepy guy turns out to be Dr. Josef Heider, a retired surgeon who seems polite at first. But here's the thing. He's obsessed with an idea that no doctor should ever have. He wants to connect 3 people together. Mouth to, well, you probably get the idea. Basically, he wants to turn people into a human centipede. And unfortunately for Lindsay and Jenny, they're perfect for the job. Dr. Heider captures them, along with another tourist named Katsuro. Then, using his surgical skills, he attaches them together so they share a single digestive system. And yes, it's exactly as horrible as you're imagining right now. Or maybe worse. The movie became instantly famous for this idea alone. Critics couldn't decide if it was disgusting genius or just plain disgusting. Audiences reacted strongly too, often leaving theaters sick or deeply traumatized. It became a cultural joke pretty quickly, probably because laughing about it made people feel slightly less grossed out. Even though it sounds like a joke, the director, Tom Six, claims it's 100% medically accurate. Apparently, he consulted an actual surgeon to make sure it could really happen. Imagine spending years in medical school and that's the question someone asks you. The second movie got banned in multiple countries because apparently even movie critics have limits. The third movie is somehow even worse, taking the concept to a prison setting with dozens of prisoners joined together. Because clearly, subtlety wasn't Tom Six's strong point. Ultimately, The Human Centipede is the kind of film people dare each other to watch. But seriously, sometimes winning the dare isn't worth it. And yet, at least you can still joke about The Human Centipede at parties. The next film has no jokes at all. It's so infamous, even hardcore horror fans sometimes say, that's too far. A Serbian Film, 2010. Okay, fair warning, this is the point where even seasoned horror fans start backing away slowly. Because if The Human Centipede was a gross out dare, a Serbian film is something else entirely. It's not just disturbing, it's infamous. It's the kind of movie people talk about in internet forums like it's cursed. The story is about Milos, a retired adult film actor who just wants to live a quiet life with his wife and son. He's offered one last job, something high-paying, artistic, and supposedly tasteful. So naturally, he says yes. Because when has vague job info and tons of money ever led to anything good? At first, the shoot seems weird but manageable. But things start getting darker. The director, Vukmir, begins asking Milos to do more disturbing scenes. The details are kept hidden from Milos as much as from the audience. But here's the twist. Milos is being drugged the whole time. He's performing in these scenes without even remembering them. And once he starts to uncover what's really going on, it's already too late. Now, we're not going to describe every detail here because it's enough to demonetize this video, but mostly because it crosses lines that even most extreme horror usually avoids. We're talking about scenes involving children, assault, and psychological torment that's so intense, multiple countries banned the film outright. In fact, some countries didn't just ban it, they made owning or screening it illegal. That's how far this movie went. So what's the message? The filmmakers claim it's a protest against censorship and corruption in Serbia. Maybe that's true, but the reality is, most viewers only remember the shock, not the statement. It's a movie designed to disgust, to anger, and to haunt you long after the credits roll. If that was the goal, then a Serbian film definitely succeeded. Maybe a little too well. It feels like it was made to see just how much they could fit into one movie. Some critics praised its boldness, sure, but many others called it repulsive, irresponsible, and deeply disturbing. Which, to be fair, is exactly how it was marketed. Oh, and just so you know, a Serbian film is basically entry-level compared to what's in the next tier. Tier 3, Horror Cultist. Life and Death of a Corn Gang, 2009. If you ever wondered what it would look like to smash together political satire, underground corn, snuff films, and war trauma into one low-budget Siberian fever dream? Well, Life and Death of a Corno Gang is your answer, and it's not a fun one. The film is about Marco, a failed filmmaker who wants to create art that matters. But unfortunately, Serbia in the early 2000s isn't exactly funding deep, sensitive masterpieces. So instead, Marco ends up directing cheap pornography. And when that doesn't work out, he starts a traveling corn theater. Basically a circus of outcasts who roll through rural towns staging erotic performances in barns and fields. At first, it's chaotic, but weirdly hopeful. The gang feels like a broken family trying to make something of themselves, even if it's in the most illegal and emotionally questionable way possible. But then, a stranger appears with an offer that changes everything. He says there's a market for something more intense. Not just corn, real pain, real death, and he's willing to pay. Here's where the movie takes a sharp left turn straight into nightmare territory. Marco, desperate for money and meaning, agrees. The group starts making snuff films. Not faked ones, but actual executions. They justify it as assisted euthanasia at first. Terminally ill people volunteering to die on camera. But it doesn't stay that clean. The line blurs fast. Their morals collapsed. Many people die. And no one can look each other in the eye anymore. The horror here isn't in flashy gore. It's in how believable the collapse is. How quickly people start compromising. How easily ideals give way to survival. And all of it happens in the shadow of a war-torn country still nursing invisible wounds. Director Mladen Djordjevic paints a portrait of post-conflict Serbia that's equal parts grotesque and poetic. There's commentary everywhere. On exploitation, on capitalism, on the West's appetite for misery tourism. Critics called it a Serbian Boogie Nights turned inside out, which might be the most cursed description ever written. Others compared it to Salò and a Serbian film. But here's the difference. This one has regret. The characters don't just do horrible things, they live with them. And often, they don't survive the guilt. The final act is brutal and bleak. Marco's dreams of meaning are shattered. His friends are gone. And the revolution he thought he was staging turns out he was just playing into the hands of people far more cruel and far more powerful. Life and Death of a Corno Gang isn't widely known. But for those who've seen it, it leaves a mark. But you think that was dark? Do you remember when I mentioned Salò, a film easily 3 times more disturbing than Midsommar or Hereditary? That's what's coming next. Salò, or The 120 Days of Sodom, 1975. Some movies make you feel sick. Others make you feel dirty. Watching Salò can make you feel some kind of moral failure. Directed by Pier Paolo Pasolini and based on the book by the Marquis de Sade, Salò isn't horror in the traditional sense. There are no ghosts, no masked killers, just people. Powerful, rich, sadistic people. And that's what makes it so much worse. The setting is fascist Italy during the final days of World War II. But instead of telling a war story, Salò focuses on 4 powerful men. The Duke, the Bishop, the Magistrate, and the President. These men, known as the Libertines. This group was planning to kidnap 9 boys and 9 girls and bring them to a remote mansion, guarded by soldiers, cut off from the rest of the world. They planned to reenact de Sade's 120 Days of Sodom, which is basically a handbook of cruelty disguised as philosophy. The movie is divided into 4 parts, like Dante's journey through hell, with each section getting darker and more twisted. The first part is called The Circle of Manias. Here, the Libertines and their helpers share stories of their own childhood abuse and trauma, and then act out these horrors on their prisoners. There's assault, humiliation, and constant fear. The guards abuse the girls and boys, sometimes in front of their own fathers. It only gets more disgusting in the next segment, The Circle of... This is where the film becomes almost unwatchable for most people. The Libertines become obsessed with feces. They force the prisoners to eat it, play humiliating games, and crawl on all 4s like animals, whipping them for disobedience, and making a mockery of anything human. I describe more, but honestly, I think we've all suffered enough. The final section is The Circle of Blood. Now, the violence turns deadly. There are fake weddings, where everyone has to laugh and dance, but if they don't, they're punished. Anyone whose name is in the president's black book is dragged out, branded, burned, mutilated, or offed. Sometimes all at once. The men watch these murders through binoculars, as if it's just another form of entertainment. It's not just the teenagers who suffer. Even some of the guards and collaborators get killed if they step out of line or show any kindness. One of the women, the pianist, can't take the horror and jumps to her death. But for the Libertines, none of this matters. They're never punished. They watch, smile, and move on. Salò isn't just a movie about violence. It's about what happens when people in power stop seeing others as human beings. It's about how easy it is to become a monster if nobody stops you. There's no message of hope, just a warning. If we forget what makes us human, this is what's left. It's one of the most notorious films ever made, and for good reason. August Underground, 2001. August Underground doesn't care about being normal. It doesn't care about having a story. In fact, it doesn't even feel like a movie at all. Instead, it feels like watching evidence that should be locked away in a police station basement. The film doesn't have much of a plot, but here's what happens. Two guys drive around filming their lives. Sounds boring, right? But they're not filming trips to the mall or vacations at the beach. The film opens with two ordinary guys, just drinking beers, laughing, like it's any other night. But almost immediately, you realize something is wrong. They head down into a filthy basement where a naked, beaten woman is tied up and covered in bruises. Instead of helping her, they mock her. They laugh about it, tease her, and act like they're having a good time at her expense. The camera doesn't look away, it just keeps rolling, making you feel like you're stuck in the room with them. And it only gets worse. In the bathroom, there's a dead man in the tub. His body is mutilated in ways you can't unsee. The guys think it's hilarious. They show off his injuries to the camera, treating the whole thing like a joke. When they get bored, they torment their living victim, dropping food on the dirty floor just out of her reach. Then leave her there and head out for more beer, as if they're just taking a break from video games. Things don't slow down. Next, they pick up a woman hitchhiker. The men convince her to undress for some quick cash, but then things turn violent. She's beaten unconscious, left by the side of the road. The camera lingers for a moment, then moves on, showing just how little these guys care. Back at the basement, their cruelty goes even further. They smear their captive with their own waste, forcing her to chew on a corpse's toe, and keep talking about what they want to do next. Just regular guys making plans for the weekend, except their plans are pure horror. You can even hear the sound of one of them sawing a corpse in the bathroom, while the other jokes about dinner. Just when you think it can't get any more unsettling, there's a sudden cut to a concert. The killers blend in with the crowd, acting completely normal. There's a fight. A bouncer gets involved, but nothing really happens. The movie follows them through other random everyday situations. They help an old lady carry groceries, then murder her in her own home. They rob a gas station, attack random people, and force strangers to humiliate themselves for fun. None of it is explained or justified. The camera just records scene after scene without ever blinking. Eventually, we see them torturing two twin brothers in a comic shop. One is dead already. The other is forced to watch as his brother's body is desecrated. The killers keep pushing, making the survivor describe everything on camera before he's killed too. The worst part? After all this, the killers just go back upstairs and party with two women, as if nothing happened. Of course, the violence comes back. One of the women is murdered, her body found by her friend. There's a frantic chase, but the movie ends before you see her fate. Still, you know it won't be good. August Underground isn't really a movie in the traditional sense. There's no story, no hero, no reason for what's happening. It's a patchwork of home video style scenes meant to feel as real as possible. The camera is shaky, the audio is bad, and nothing feels scripted. That's what makes it so hard to watch. It doesn't feel like fiction. It feels like you found evidence of a crime, and you're the only witness. And what's maybe the scariest part? The killers aren't movie monsters. They're just regular guys doing regular things, right up until they decide to ruin someone's life. If you saw them at a bar or a store, you'd never know. Some people call this film pointless trash. Others say it's a milestone in extreme horror. But one thing's for sure. If you see it, you won't forget it. And honestly, you might wish you could. Zero Day, 2003. Released in 2003, Zero Day tells the story of two high school students, Andre Kriegman and Cal Gabriel, who meticulously plan a mass shooting at their school. And here's the thing. The entire film is told through their camcorder. No soundtrack, no flashy editing. Just these two kids, talking to the lens, calmly explaining why they're going to murder their classmates. If that already sounds familiar, it's because it's directly inspired by the real-life Columbine massacre. The killers in that tragedy also left behind disturbing home videos. Zero Day mirrors them so closely that many viewers initially thought it was real found footage. Andre and Cal aren't movie villains. They're not foaming at the mouth or screaming about revenge. They joke, they eat pizza, they complain about homework. They could be any two kids in your school. The movie doesn't sensationalize anything. There's no bloodbath set to rock music. The attack itself happens in the final minutes of the film, seen through blurry surveillance-style footage and chaotic camera shakes. Most of the movie is just waiting, watching them plan, watching them practice, watching them slowly, methodically decide to go through with it. You keep hoping one of them will back out. You keep hoping something will stop them, but nothing does. And when it finally happens, it's fast, ugly, and deeply disturbing. Critics praise the film for its restraint, for not turning tragedy into spectacle, for not giving us a reason to understand the killers. There are no dramatic motivations, no cinematic justifications. Just two kids who felt like gods behind a camera. Zero Day didn't get a wide release. It wasn't a hit, but it became legendary in underground circles, especially among people interested in media ethics, school violence, and the psychology of killers. Some found it respectful, others thought it was dangerous. Even now, screening it publicly can lead to backlash. Now, when we talk about backlash, this next film takes it to another level. It was so horrifying the director actually got arrested for making it. Cannibal Holocaust, 1980. Usually, movies try hard to seem realistic, but the Cannibal Holocaust seemed so real that its director actually had to prove in court he didn't murder his actors. Yeah, this is that movie. The story starts with four filmmakers who travel deep into the Amazon rainforest to make a documentary about local tribes. But the filmmakers never return. A rescue team finds only their camera equipment. And here's where things get wild. When the footage is recovered and played back, everyone realizes the filmmakers did terrible things. Actually, it turns out they're not really innocent explorers. They bullied, abused, and even killed members of the tribe, just to make their film more shocking. And eventually, the tribe fought back. It didn't go well for the filmmakers. The movie became instantly famous because of how real it looked. Several animals were actually killed on camera, and the special effects for human violence were so convincing that many people, including Italian police, thought some deaths were real. In a world before social media and YouTube, rumors spread quickly and were hard to disprove. When the movie came out, people believed the film was an actual snuff film, which, funny enough, is exactly what happened next. After the movie premiered, Italian police arrested director Ruggero Deodato because they believe he'd actually killed people on camera. In court, Deodato even demonstrated how he did the famous impalement scene using a bike seat, a rod, and some very clever camera tricks. Eventually, the murder charges were dropped, but the film's reputation was set in stone. Deodato had to track down the actors to prove they were still alive. Imagine getting a phone call from a police officer asking, "Excuse me, could you come to court to confirm you're not dead?" Definitely a weird day for everyone involved. Eventually, Deodato was cleared, but that didn't stop the movie from being banned in multiple countries. Ironically, banning Cannibal Holocaust only made it more popular. It became the forbidden fruit of horror. This film influence started a whole new genre of found footage horror. Movies like The Blair Witch Project and Paranormal Activity owe a huge debt to Deodato's work. To clarify, it's still banned in some places even today. And it wasn't just the violence against humans. The film also includes real scenes of animals being harmed. Critics and audiences still argue about this movie. Some call it an important film about human cruelty and exploitation. Others think it's nothing but shock value, disgusting and unnecessary. But here's the deal. No matter what side you're on, everyone agrees it's unforgettable. But at least this film relied on practical effects, because the next film crossed the line. Men Behind the Sun, 1988. Because this isn't a film about fantasy horror. This is about history, the kind most people never get taught, because it's too horrific to fit in a textbook. Set during World War II, the film focuses on Unit 731, a real-life Japanese military facility where human experimentation was carried out in secret. And just to be clear, we're not talking about tests or research in the usual sense. We're talking about war crimes so brutal, they make the worst horror movie look like a Saturday morning cartoon. The story kicks off in a documentary style. We meet the new recruits from the Japanese Youth Corps, who are sent to Unit 731, a secret base in Japanese-occupied Manchuria. They're there to learn, but learning here means watching and sometimes taking part in unspeakable acts. They see things nobody should ever have to see, like doctors doing surgery on live prisoners, or a woman having her arms frozen and dipped in water until the skin just falls right off. Now, there's a tiny bit of hope in the story. A group of the young soldiers became friends with a mute Chinese kid who hangs around the camp. But this makes things even sadder. He gets tricked into coming inside, put to sleep, and the doctors cut him up for parts. And then the guy who brought him in, he's forced to wheel his body away. That moment changes everything for those soldiers. Some of them finally realize, yeah, we're the bad guys here. And here's the part that pushed this movie into true infamy. Some of the scenes used actual cadavers. Yes, real bodies. The filmmakers obtained them legally from medical sources, but still, when people talk about Men Behind the Sun, this is the moment that makes them pause. Naturally, the backlash was intense. The film was banned in multiple countries. Critics called it tasteless, exploitative, and obscene. Even horror fans debated whether it went too far, but the director, T.F. Moe, insisted it was meant to be educational. He said the world needed to remember the atrocities of Unit 731, and that sanitizing the horror would be an insult to the victims. And here's the twisted story. He might have a point. Because as awful as it is to watch, Men Behind the Sun forces you to confront a part of history that most people would rather ignore. But even if you respect its message, that doesn't make it any easier to sit through. Many who watch it report feeling physically ill. Some don't finish it at all. And unlike most horror films, there's no relief when the credits roll. Just silence. And maybe some Googling you'll regret immediately after. If you made it through that, you might think you've seen the worst. But the next movie is so convincing, the FBI got involved. And after that, we're heading into films that don't even bother pretending to have a story. They're just pure, relentless suffering. Tier 4, Horror Devotee. Guinea Pig, Flower of Flesh and Blood, 1985. At this point in the iceberg, you're not watching horror for thrills anymore. You're here because you're chasing stuff that's hidden or outright banned. Seriously, what's wrong with you? And Guinea Pig, Flower of Flesh and Blood might just be the purest example of that. This Japanese film is barely 40 minutes long, but that's more than enough. There's no plot, no dialogue, and no point really. Just a man dressed as a samurai who drugs a woman, chains her to a slab, and then methodically dismembers her. That's it. The entire movie is just that scene, dragged out with extreme detail and no relief. The effects are disturbingly good. So good, in fact, that rumor spread fast. Some people believed it was a real snuff film, and not just horror fans online. We're talking actual FBI agents. Here's the thing. In the late 80s, actor Charlie Sheen reportedly watched Flower of Flesh and Blood and was so horrified he contacted the FBI, convinced it was real. That's right, Charlie Sheen may have starred in Hot Shots, but this movie broke him. After that, there was an actual investigation that followed. Eventually, the filmmakers had to prove it was all special effects, showing behind-the-scenes footage and props just to convince authorities it wasn't a real murder. But the controversy didn't stop there. The Guinea Pig series became known for its extreme content in underground horror circles. You wouldn't find these at Blockbuster. They were more the kind of thing passed around by hardcore collectors, usually on old VHS tapes. What makes Flower of Flesh and Blood even more disturbing is its calm tone. There's no screaming, no chaos, just slow, quiet mutilation. The killer narrates his actions with poetic calm, treating dismemberment like art. And in a way, that's what makes it so terrifying. There's no emotion, no urgency, just obsession. Even most critics never touched it. And well, probably those who did usually filed it under should probably be burned. Melancholie der Engel, 2009. There's barely a story in this film. A dying man reunites with an old friend, and they set off on a countryside journey to reflect on life, death, beauty, and decay. Sounds peaceful, right? But here's the thing. Their reflection involves dragging a group of women into a desolate house and subjecting them to some of the most grotesque and inhuman acts ever filmed. We're talking necrophilia, animal mutilation, bodily fluids, and every taboo you've probably tried to forget exists. What makes it even more disturbing is the poetic tone. The characters speak in existential monologues about life and nature and the futility of everything. One minute they're quoting Nietzsche, the next they're urinating on a corpse. Critics, if you can even call them that in this case, are extremely divided. Some say Melancholie der Engel is Dora's masterpiece. Others just call it an endurance test for the clinically depressed. One viewer described it as watching my own soul rot in real time. That's probably the most accurate review you'll find. This movie is banned in multiple countries, has never seen mainstream distribution, and lives mostly on bootleg DVDs and obscure torrent sites. And even then, most people who find it stop watching halfway through. Not because they're bored, but because their stomachs or minds simply give out. And yet, for some, that's the appeal. It strips everything away. Narrative, emotion, humanity. Until all that's left is decay and the creeping suspicion that this film saw something in you and didn't like it. If you thought that was bad, the next movie barely has a story at all. Just a string of disturbing images and the kind of ideas that stick with you in the worst way. Subconscious Cruelty, 2000. This Canadian experimental horror film isn't structured like a normal movie. There's no single plot, no main character to root for. Instead, it's an anthology, which means it's not just one story. It's a bunch of short films all packed into one weird film. There's no main plot tying everything together, and each part is packed with disturbing images, religious symbols, and a big dose of, what the heck did I just see? The film opens with a segment titled Human Larvae. Sounds fun, right? In it, we meet a narrator who's obsessed with his pregnant sister, and not in the wholesome protective brother kind of way. Nope, this one's different. He views her pregnancy as unnatural, parasitic, and slowly becomes consumed with violent, incestuous urges. So we're going to leave the details out, but just know it sets the tone for everything that follows. Completely deranged, deeply symbolic for the director, but absolutely unwatchable for casual viewing. Next is Rebirth, where naked people writhe in the mud and feast on a crucified figure. Then there's Right Brain, Martyrdom, a segment that dives into the mind of an artist as he slowly loses his grip on reality. He believes his creativity is a form of self-sacrifice, and the only way to create something truly beautiful is to suffer for it. Spoiler, he suffers. A lot. There are scenes involving mutilation, blood, and symbolic birth imagery that'll make you question your own eyes, and maybe your life choices for watching it. Subconscious Cruelty was directed by Karim Hussein, who said the film is about how culture suppresses instinct. Critics had no idea what to do with it. Some called it a masterpiece of visual horror, others just called it gross. The film was banned in several countries, delayed for years due to censorship, and rarely screened outside underground festivals. But for horror cultists, it became a secret badge of honor. If you sat through Subconscious Cruelty without blinking, you'd seen something most people never will, and maybe never should. Tumbling Doll of Flesh, 1998, aka Niku Daruma. Also known as Niku Daruma, this 1998 Japanese film doesn't just disturb you, it degrades you. There's barely a story. A woman agrees to shoot an adult video in what appears to be a quiet, empty apartment. A camera rolls. There's some soft dialogue. A man enters. The crew begins to film. And for a while, it looks like just another low-budget pink film. Awkward, clumsy, boring even. But then, something changes. Without warning, the man begins brutally torturing the woman. Not in a stylized horror way. There's no soundtrack, no dramatic cuts, just static shots, cold lighting, and prolonged graphic violence that feels more like a crime scene tape than a movie. Her limbs were removed. Her flesh was cut. The violence goes from psychological to physical to surgical. And that silence is what makes it unbearable. There's no screaming, no music, just the mechanical hum of a video camera and the sound of dehumanization. What makes Tumbling Doll of Flesh so infamous isn't just what it shows, but how it shows it. The film is shot like amateur footage, grainy and handheld. The last 15 minutes are almost completely unwatchable. Not because of what's happening, though yes, that too, but because of the sense that you're watching something you were never meant to see. There are no credits, no ending. It just stops. The director, Tamaki Chienaru, never gave a satisfying explanation. Some say it was an experiment. Others believe it was a statement about the violence and the dehumanization of night workers. But honestly, most viewers never even get to that point. They just stop, they turn it off, and they wish they hadn't pressed play in the first place. The film is banned in most countries. Even seasoned horror veterans often say, don't bother, because Tumbling Doll of Flesh doesn't give you anything back. Just a cold, empty screen, and the knowledge that now this film lives in your head. Alright, maybe you're thinking, what's the deal with the last three films? Just senseless gore for the sake of it? Made by people who are clearly insane? Well, at least the next film has a story. But don't worry, its creator was still completely insane. Visitor Q, 2001. Directed by Takashi Miike. Visitor Q is a low-budget digital video nightmare about a family so dysfunctional, so broken, that Messed Up doesn't even begin to cover it. And ironically, it's technically a comedy. At the center of the story is one of the most dysfunctional families you'll ever see. There's the dad, who's cheating on his wife, the mom, who's addicted to drugs, a daughter who's selling her body, and the son who gets bullied nonstop at school. Basically, if you took every family problem you could imagine, put it in a blender, and turned it on high, you'd get this movie. Then one day, out of nowhere, a random stranger appears and smashes the dad in the head with a rock. Yeah, that's his introduction. But here's the thing, they don't call the police or try to kick this guy out. Instead, they bring him home. Like, hey, want to join the family? The weirdness just begins there. Now let's talk about the disturbing scenes. And you don't have to wait long. Right at the start, there's a scene that's just wrong. The daughter, who's supposed to be in high school, is selling herself. But the F-up twist is her first customer is her own dad. They even haggle over the price. If you're not uncomfortable by now, congratulations, you have nerves of steel. But wait, it gets weirder. Later, the dad tries to hook up with his mistress, who's a reporter. The plan? Get her to cover his son's bullying on TV for his own twisted fame. When she refuses, things turn violent. He tries to force himself on her. But in her struggle, he accidentally kills her. Instead of, panicking, he brings her corpse home. And then in one of the most bizarre scenes in any movie ever, he did the with the corpse. Not only that, but his sausage literally gets stuck to the dead body. Because, well, let's just say nature is not on his side, in a way that makes you feel guilty for laughing. Oh, and when the dad gets stuck, he asks his wife for help. And believe it or not, she actually helps him. If that's not the weirdest thing you've heard, I don't know what is. But the madness doesn't stop. The corpse is eventually chopped up and disposed of by both the dad and the mom. There are more scenes of bullying, drug use, and complete family breakdown. But somehow, the visitor keeps hanging around. Almost like he's trying to fix the family by making everything as weird as possible. By the end, after all the insanity, you're left thinking, what did I just watch? It's gross, it's awkward, and at times, it's so over the top that it turns darkly funny. This is one of those movies where you laugh, then feel bad for laughing, and then realize you're just as disturbed as the characters. Miike has always been the kind of director who uses chaos to make a point. But Visitor Q isn't chaos for its own sake. It's a pitch-black satire about media, family, and modern society. Every moment is soaked in irony, from the absurd violence to the weirdly heartfelt ending. Yes, there's an ending. And yes, somehow it's hopeful. Go ahead and watch it, if you dare. Next tier takes us even deeper, into weird, storyless films from decades past. But old doesn't always mean harmless. Tier 5, black and white avant-garde hell. Begotten, 1990. Begotten is not your typical movie. The film doesn't even have dialogue, and the images are grainy, blurry, and black and white, which makes everything even creepier. The film starts with the most infamous figure in this film, God. No, really, that's supposed to be God. He looks like a sad zombie just sitting there. And the first thing we see is him painfully disemboweling himself. For what feels like 5 solid minutes, he rips out his own organs and spreads his guts all over the place. Once that's over, there's this strange fluid leaking out at his feet. It's ambiguous, but the noises really suggest it's meant to be, well, that white thing from Men. And then Mother Earth walks up, grabs what's left of God's junk, and, well, uses it to inseminate herself. Yes, it's as weird as it sounds. And then 9 months later, Mother Earth is heavily pregnant. She gives birth to the son of Earth, who looks like he crawled out of a Tim Burton nightmare. Instead of sticking around to care for her son, Mother Earth just walks away, leaving him to convulse on the ground. But things get even weirder. Some masked figures called nomads show up, tie the son down, force him to drink something, start a fire, and throw him in. Don't worry, the son comes back to life, briefly. Mother Earth finds him again, ties him up with a long cord, and drags him away. But the nomads aren't done. They attack again, beat the son, and the movie suggests both and mutilation for Mother Earth. Eventually, both are killed and cut into pieces, and the last scenes shows plants dying, then growing back. So, what does it mean? The director, E. Elias Merrig, said the movie represents death, rebirth, and the cruelty of nature. But it might just be weird for the sake of weird. Critics called it an artistic masterpiece. But let's be honest, most viewers just called it weird, confusing, and disturbing like most of the movies on this iceberg. Interestingly, Merrig spent over 3 years making the film, meticulously hand-processing the footage to make it look old and damaged. Because apparently horror isn't just about scaring people, it's about annoying yourself too. Begotten quickly gained a reputation as one of the most unsettling experimental films ever made. Bootleg VHS copies circulated at underground film festivals. It became legendary among film nerds who loved how obscure and bizarre it was. Yet even film nerds admit you probably shouldn't watch it alone, or at night, or ever, really. The Act of Seeing with One's Own Eyes, 1971. We've been through demons, snuff tapes, war crimes, and mutilation. But somehow this next film manages to feel more disturbing than all of them, without a single scream, a drop of fake blood, or line of dialogue. The Art of Seeing with One's Own Eyes is not a horror movie. It's not even fiction. It's a documentary. Directed by Stan Brakhage, who is known for his experimental silent films, This 32-minute short was shot inside a Pittsburgh morgue. Body after body is unzipped, inspected, and dissected. Surgeons peel away skin, open skulls, remove organs, and the camera never flinches. It stays locked in, almost indifferent. There's no dramatic lighting, no horror aesthetic, just clinical fluorescent rooms, real people doing their job, and the undeniable fact of death. And here's what makes it truly unsettling. It's not trying to be sensational. There's no gore for the sake of shock. The forensic pathologists move with calm precision. The whole atmosphere is quiet, respectful even. But the longer you watch, the more it gets to you. Because you're not watching a story about death. You're watching death itself. You begin to realize the title isn't poetic. It's literal. You are seeing, with your own eyes, what human death actually looks like. When it was released, the act of seeing didn't make headlines. It wasn't a blockbuster. It circulated through art galleries and academic circles. But among those who saw it, it left a permanent impression. Even seasoned horror fans say this is one of the few films that truly disturb them, because it's real. And no matter how tough you are, you can't unreel it. And the irony? The film has no blood-soaked climax, no monstrous killer, no shocking twist. It doesn't need them, because the real horror here is the truth we all know but try to forget. One day, this will be us. Chien Andalou, 1929. Chien Andalou makes you uncomfortable because it doesn't care if it makes sense. Released in 1929 and co-created by Salvador Dali and Luis Buñuel, this silent short film is the great-grandfather of cinematic weirdness. It's only 21 minutes long, but it's 21 minutes of surreal, dreamlike images designed to feel like your subconscious is melting into the screen. There's no plot, not even close. The film opens with a man sharpening a razor. He walks onto a balcony and casually slices open a woman's eyeball. And yes, it's real. Dali and Buñuel use the dead calf's eye. But when you're watching, your brain doesn't make that distinction. And that's just the first scene. From there, the film spirals through a sequence of bizarre, disconnected images. Ants crawl out of a hole in a man's hand. A woman pokes at his severed hand with a stick. A piano drags dead donkeys across the floor. A man pulls two grand pianos filled with animal carcasses and priests. Because of course he does. None of it connects. None of it resolves anything. And none of it is supposed to. Dali and Buñuel reportedly made Chien Andalou by writing down their dreams and combining the images. Their only rule? No symbolism, no meaning, and no logic. If they ever understood what a scene meant, they removed it. Which is exactly why it works. Watching this film isn't like watching a story unfold. It's like watching someone else's dream hijack your brain. Images flash, shift, repeat, time jumps, doors open to nowhere. Everything feels like it might matter, and then dissolves before you can grasp it. You can't prepare for it. You can't explain it. All you can do is sit in it and try not to squirm when your mind keeps asking, why did they just do that? At the time, audiences were outraged. Some loved it. Others stormed out of the theater. Buñuel famously carried rocks in his pockets to defend himself from possible attacks during screenings. But over the years, Chien Andalou has become a pillar of surrealist cinema, studied and analyzed for nearly a century, even though the creators would probably hate that. It's not horror in the traditional sense, but it's deeply unnerving. And the fact that it still unsettles people nearly 100 years later says everything. Tier 6. Lost films, digital myths, and banned tapes. The Sealed Room. Now we've hit one of the darkest depths of the most disturbing movie Iceberg. And if you're still watching, either your stomach is made of steel or your curiosity needs therapy. Let's start with The Sealed Room. If you spent any time browsing creepy forums, you've probably heard rumors about this so-called VHS tape that supposedly surfaced in the 2000s. According to reports from those who claim to have seen it, the tape shows a man slowly bricking himself into a small room. No cuts, no dialogue, just a single wide shot. Over the course of what feels like hours, he builds the final wall, trapping himself inside. Once the final brick is placed, nothing happens. The camera stays fixed. Minutes pass, then an hour, then longer. The man paces, sits, stares at the camera. Sometimes he cries. Sometimes he just stares at the wall. Eventually, days later, according to the timestamps, he dies, on screen, alone, and buried alive. If this sounds like some bizarre student film, that's because it might be. But here's the thing, no one knows for sure. Not a single clip, screenshot, or credible report. Nothing. It's the horror equivalent of my uncle works at Nintendo. Some fans online even claim that the sealed room was made by Alex Kansas, the same mind behind the Monument mythos. Why? Because Monument mythos loves the idea of sealed off rooms and dark things trapped inside monuments. One episode, for example, imagines the Statue of Liberty hiding a hungry monster beneath its base, munching on unlucky immigrants. That's the kind of vibe the sealed room is supposed to have. But there's no evidence to back up this connection. It's just internet speculation. If you go looking for actual proof that the sealed room exists, good luck. You won't find anything in lost media archives, police records, film databases, or horror history books. It only ever pops up in Reddit threads and message boards, where someone's always heard of it, but nobody has seen it. The first time it gets mentioned online is around the same time analog horror starts booming. So it's almost definitely a product of internet culture, not some rare forbidden tape gathering dust in a thrift store. If you thought that was bad, what about a movie people can't even finish? Some films are infamous for just how many people give up watching. M.D. Pope, most disturbed person on planet Earth. Let's get one thing out of the way. M.D. Pope isn't really a film. There's no plot, no actors, and definitely no meaning, unless you count existential dread. The name means most disturbed person on Earth, which, if anything, undersells it. Created by an underground editor named Thomas Cinemagore in 2013. M.D. Pope is what's called a mixtape. Basically, it's a 2-hour and 27-minute highlight reel from the darkest corners of the internet. And I mean darkest. So what's in it? Everything. The film is a collection of 61 clips pulled straight from shock sites like Best Gore, eFucked, and a bunch of other places you're better off never visiting. It's a greatest hits of viral nightmare fuel from the early 2010s. The golden age of dare you to watch this content. But here's the thing. M.D. Pope is like a cake made of trauma. The base layer is extreme corn clips, and not the fun kind. Think self-mutilation, people shoving foreign objects where they absolutely shouldn't, and for some reason, way too many things involving jars. If you recognize the titles 2 Girls, 1 Cup or 1 Guy, 1 Jar, you already know the feel, and it doesn't stop there. There's also scat. A woman poops directly on a man's face, and he treats it less like a problem, more like a meal. And yes, it even crosses into animal cruelty. You'll see infamous crush videos, kittens and rabbits killed on camera, and even a scene where a woman stabs a kitten with a stiletto heel. I wish I was exaggerating. But wait, there's also extreme violence. Cartel beheadings, people split open by car accidents, mutilated bodies, you name it. M.D. Pope throws it all in. No filter, no censors, no sense of humanity. There's one video where a guy saws into his own bird, and another where someone's skull is peeled open like a can of tuna. Sometimes it's so over the top, you start to feel numb. The whole thing is almost mathematical in its cruelty. 50% of the clips are corn. The rest are a mix of gore, vomit, animal abuse, and scat. It's like a recipe for losing your faith in humanity. And the most messed up part? This is just the first film. There's a sequel, and then a third one. Each one supposedly more unwatchable than the last. It's not art, and calling it entertainment would be an insult to the world. It's a grim archive of what humanity is capable of when no one's watching. Even the bravest YouTubers like Cold Raven Nest, Brendan Reviews, and friends never watched it twice. The Grifter. Alleged cursed video. The Grifter first surfaced on the internet in the late 2000s, through 4chan threads and fringe creepypasta forums. People claimed there was a video. A cursed video. Not haunted, not full of jump scares. Just wrong. The kind of wrong that sticks in your brain like a splinter you can't remove. Its descriptions vary. Some say the video is a series of disturbing clips spliced together. Dolls melting, faces stretch into unnatural shapes, insects crawling under human skin. Others claim it's more subtle. Static-laced footage of a man in a room staring at the camera, whispering gibberish in reverse. But here's where it gets really weird. Everyone who talks about the Grifter says it does something to you. Some report hallucinations, headaches, nosebleeds, insomnia. One post even claimed the viewer vomited blood halfway through. Another said they woke up days later with no memory of turning the video off. Most people who mention it online delete their posts soon after. And some threads, creepily enough, just vanish. There's one popular quote associated with the Grifter that keeps resurfacing. It doesn't scare you, it breaks you. The video is supposedly named after the creature or person who appears near the end. The Grifter, a gaunt, pale figure with hollow eyes and melting face, smiling too wide for its head. Some say it whispers your name. Others say it starts mimicking your own facial expressions in real time, even though the footage was pre-recorded. But here's the thing. No one has ever confirmed a full copy of the Grifter exists. There are a few 30-second clips online claiming to be part of it, but they're usually low-effort hoaxes or re-edits of other horror shorts. One infamous clip, just a shot of a decaying hallway with a distant figure slowly approaching, was proven to be from an unrelated student film. Yet the myth refuses to die. The more you read about the Grifter, the more you start seeing patterns, similar imagery in old experimental films, audio distortions that show up in unrelated YouTube videos, and a growing list of names connected to the myth who have just stopped posting. So, is the Grifter real? Most likely not in the physical sense, but as a concept, as a legend passed from one forum to the next, warning that some videos don't just disturb you, they damage you. Yeah, it's real enough. Snuff, 1976. At first glance, Snuff seems like just another exploitation film from the 70s. Cheap production, bad acting, a paper-thin plot involving a Manson-style cult murdering people in South America. It was originally shot in 1971 under the title Slaughter, directed by Michael and Roberta Findlay. But the movie flopped and was forgotten. Then something happened. In 1975, producer Alan Shackleton acquired the rights to the film and re-released it with a twist. He added a new ending. In it, after the film finishes, the camera appears to keep rolling. A crew member flirts with an actress. They chat casually, and then the crew violently kills her. The lights flicker. She screams. Blood splatters. The camera drops. Fade to black. And here's the thing. It's filmed like it's real. People lined up to see it. Protesters gathered outside theaters. Women's rights groups picketed, arguing that the film promoted violence against women. The FBI even got involved to investigate whether the final scene was an actual murder. The producers, they played dumb, denied nothing, confirmed nothing, and with it came the myth that Snuff was the first real snuff film. Of course, it wasn't. The final scene was fake. The actress is alive and the murder was staged, but the damage was done. People believed it was real, and that belief gave birth to a genre that still creeps around the edges of the internet today. Here's what's truly disturbing about Snuff. Not the gore, not the violence, but the implication. It was the first film that asked, what if the camera didn't stop when it was supposed to? It blurred the line between performance and crime, and even though it's technically a hoax, it planted a seed. Suddenly, every shady VHS tape passed around in basements or bootleg horror circles carried that question. What if this one's real? And that's all the movies we've got for this iceberg. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you want more disturbing deep dives, make sure to hit subscribe and stick around, because there's always things to explore. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.